Hi there. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Today we're going to talk about the eclipse that's coming up. It's a partial solar eclipse happening in Aries. And as you'll see in the chart, there is a big cluster of planets all in Pisces Aries. So we're going to be leaning heavily into the differences between these signs and what the progression from one sign to the next means. So before I get going, I wanted to invite you to join my Intuition Cafe on Facebook. It's a free group to practice your intuition skills. Sometimes it's reflective questions, sometimes it's really light, easy questions. Sometimes you want to engage and answer with people, sometimes maybe you don't. So it's supposed to be just a very easy, free-flowing group where you get to practice. And I also have a workshop coming up on the 30th of March, if you're in the Montreal area, and it's on the moon signs. So I will be talking about, I will tell you what your moon sign is, and then we'll be talking about what that means, the quality of your moon sign, what it means in our lives, which is really chunky when it comes to the moon, because the moon represents your innermost needs, your psyche, the deepest part of you, who you are when we really get to know you. And it tells you what you need to the point where I can tell you by your moon sign what you need to be happy and what is non-negotiable for you in order to be happy. Yeah. It also talks about your upbringing, your mother, which is always very deep work to do. And it also tells us about your past lives. So there's a lot to learn from your moon sign. I might offer it online as well if I hear back from people, or I'll just do it. But for now, it's at Point Claire Village. So that's near the West Isle of Montreal, and it's not too late to sign up. So I'm changing my tune a bit with how I'm going to talk about astrology and how to use astrology and the energies. We've been in a long chapter of Piscean energy. We've had Neptune traveling through there for, I believe, 14 years. We've had Saturn passing through, and it'll leave in May and go into Aries. Neptune, as I mentioned, is leaving Pisces and going into Aries on March 30th. And, you know, we're sort of in a Piscean age, because the age of Aquarius that we're in actually means that the ages go backwards, not forwards. So we've been in a Piscean age, and we're moving into an Aquarian age. So I know it can seem confusing. Pluto has shifted into Aquarius, so we're already seeing these shifts. When the planets go into Aries versus Pisces, again, it's pulling us out of a long, long, long Piscean phase. And I'm going to be, therefore, shifting my languaging of how we look at astrology, how we use it, how we take in and read these energies going on around us, but also strategically, how do we use it? Because Aries and Aquarius are times of rebellion, revolution, action, doing things differently, cleaning the slate and starting anew. It's not the Pisces, you know, dreamy, meditative, spiritual, channeling, artistic, poetic. We're moving out of that, which isn't bad. We've had many, many, many years, or Piscean age, we've had centuries where we've tried certain ways, certain approaches to life. Pisces is sort of where everything comes together as one. and you synthesize, you merge, you have, great visionary and artistic and compassionate actions taken under Pisces. But when you come out of it, it's sort of like, okay, you've reflected. Now what? Now what are you going to do? Based on your visions, based on your intuition, what are we now going to do? And we have to take that arrow and launch. So we're shifting from a great time of inner to action, of feminine energy to masculine. It's major. So we're going to talk about it more in terms of how can we be strategic and follow our gut and not linger in maybe over dramatizing or emotionalizing everything, which doesn't mean we don't include it. It's just we're definitely going to be shifting into a time of action and strategy. So let's take a look at our chart and get into the nitty-gritty here of what this means, this eclipse. It's not a full eclipse. It's not like last year where there was a total solar eclipse. It's a partial. Unfortunately, it's happening in the middle of the night over here in the Eastern time zone. So not really going to see much. It's happening on the new moon. So again, dark moon and eclipse of the sun in the dark. It's going to be happening around like almost 4 a.m. here in the Eastern time zone. So, you'll have to be living somewhere in a different time zone where the daylight is already there for you to be able to see the partial eclipse, but doesn't mean you won't feel it. And it's March 29th, like close to 4 in the morning. So a lot of you might, be really energized and awake and can't sleep, or dreaming a lot, or a little more restless, let's say, on Friday night. So, all depends on you. But if you want to kick into the Aries side of things, you might want to go out and just expect to have a later, more active night on Friday. So let's take a look at the chart. All right. So take a look at this pattern, just how clear this is. This looks even like an arrow. Over here, all alone, is the South Node in Virgo in the 6th house, almost on the cusp of the 7th. And everything else is over here going on. Also, the main oppositional energy is the nodal axis and what touches it. So for me, that gives me a feeling, since this is the South Node, which is your past life direction. Now, everything's heading towards the North Node. It's up there, 27 degrees. Venus is conjunct the North Node. Neptune is conjunct the North Node and Venus. Mercury is conjunct the North Node and Venus. And we could even add Saturn in there. It's all clustered. So this is really crazy energy for an eclipse. It literally almost looks like a bow and arrow. And when you've got, the part that's pulling back the bow and going to launch is the South Node, is the past. How symbolic is that? So you can really use whatever tension arises, whatever sudden things could be on your plate, whatever reversals of things you thought were cool, but they're not now, things you thought you had, but they're not. It's not a bad thing. It could be launching you into your future, into new directions. And the South Node in Virgo is worth talking about here. So what is that energy look like? That's the past direction, okay? The South Node in Virgo is somebody who had many, many lives, either as a nun, a monk, a doctor, a healer, a hermit. It's somebody who spent all their time serving others, denying their own needs a lot of the time to serve. And they would have spent a lot of time analyzing things, organizing things, making everything ultra detailed and meticulous and methodical. And there's a need now, or a push for that. That's the past direction here. It's even in the 6th house of service. So the thing is to let go of the over analyzing and the nitty-gritty, picky, detailed side of you, the 1,000,001 things on the to-do list, the control that comes with that. And it's launching you forward into the North Node in Pisces, which is, as we said, joined by Mercury, Neptune, Venus, and Saturn, all emphasizing the North Node. And that North Node in Pisces means somebody who lives by their own inner guidance, their own faith. They trust their connection to the divine, or to their source, to themselves, their higher self, whatever you want to call that. They trust that to the degree that they are now the living example or living embodiment of trusting the divine and feeling connection to the greater whole. It's not, I'm going to run out there and organize this and fix these people and make sure that this is, and it's not that example. That, that's a model that we've lived for a very, very long time on planet Earth. And I don't think it means a departure from compassion for other people. But this idea of victim and savior is very strong with Virgo Pisces. I'm going to save people. Well, can you save people? And if you are intervening and helping people, are you actually giving them ways to empower themselves? Or are you just placating them or enabling them to stay where they are and not grow, but make sure they're all right? And there's so many layers to that. There's so many layers to that. Is it more noble to give somebody, I don't know. It's the whole teach somebody to fish thing. You can either bring them dinner or you can teach them to fish. We're a little more at the teach them to fish side of things now. We're kicking into Aries, into action, which is independence, self-sufficiency. Go out there and figure it out. The South Node in Virgo is very much the one that was like, well, we have systems and we've figured it out, and we're going to distribute this and and this is how that works. And you fill out those papers and then we'll give you this and we'll, it's like it's a service model, and it's been very well done and well thought through. But obviously we see flaws in these systems, but for the most part, it's amazing that we have insurance and healthcare and education systems and government systems and all kinds of things that imagine if we didn't have any of it, where you're in the US, you're seeing a lot of things being ripped out and dismantled before your eyes that you thought you could count on. Well, all of these things are South Node and Virgo, all these infrastructure and government bodies and agencies and councils and things that have looked at all the details and figured out systematic ways to serve. You know, that's the shadow side of this South Node in Virgo, is those things are being pulled and let go of, and we're going towards, you know, this complex idea of how do you have self-sufficiency and how do you have compassion for other people without it controlling them, enabling them, or letting it bury you in the process. It's very complex what we're navigating right now. If any of you out there listening have ever had someone in your family or dated someone, married, or your children, where they've got some sort of difficulty that they're having trouble overcoming, and it starts off with finding solutions and working together on it, and then there's always a point where the individual has to step up and want to learn or want to overcome something, or want the self-sufficiency, or want the tools to do things themselves. And there's that tipping point where you give people the tools, you can give them the tools and the motivation to go learn it on their own, but you can't physically stop somebody from taking another drink, let's say. You know, they have a choice at some point whether they're going to find the will inside them to commit to a program or get help or stop drinking or do other activities. They have to have that will themselves to do it. Otherwise, what happens, the victim-savior dichotomy is, well, you know, we enable it, and we find ways to, but it's so complicated, I find it hard to even say it. Let's use the example of alcoholism, since I brought that up, but there's so many. There's so many. Even going to AA can be a crutch over time. It's there and it helps people, but at a certain point, people, to grow, you need to move on from always being in a support group. Or let's say we have our systems like welfare. It's meant to catch you, to be a safety net when you're going through something tough. And it's very tricky terrain. Things can be tough and bury people psychologically and emotionally for many years. So where do you draw that line before you say, hey, you've got to find your will again. You've got to step up and you've got to overcome your issues. You've got to take action to get better. If you just hand people something and say, here you go, I'll take care of you. You can wallow. You don't have to do anything. You can stay in this state forever, and then we'll support you. Is that compassion or is that enabling? That depends on the situation. It's both, right? There's some people will never overcome. But I think there's many, many who can find the will and take steps and improve their lives more than the complacency or the fear or the frozenness or the, you know, even sometimes the abusive side of like keeping people dependent and enabling them. There's many who can find that inner strength, but what we tend to do in society is like we give until we can't anymore, and then we say, I can't do this, and then you're on your own, just like right now with what's going on with the US. Well, we've given, that's their impression. We've given you this, we've given you that, and it's too corrupt. There's too many people getting money for nothing, so they say. And then they just pull the rug without a safety net, without a warning. Well, that is not helpful. That is abusive. You know, so the thing that we have to navigate, if we really want a better society to help things be more efficient for real, is you have to teach people to fish. You have to give people time frames. So again, think of somebody, let's go back to the alcoholic. What if you said, to somebody who's just ready to get clean and sober, and they're ready to go to meetings. What if you told them you have a maximum of, and you give a time frame? You'd have to ask people who are experts in the field how long. But let's say you gave people, I'm guessing, from what I know, they say at least a year of sobriety. But let's say you gave them 2, and you said, you've got 2 years, you can come to AA all you want, we've got a sponsor for you, but we also have these actionable steps that you need to be working on to make sure you're getting better and not just staying stuck here. To not get too comfortable in this, because it helps to have that safe container to come and process your emotions and go through your pains and the reasons you were started drinking and all of this. It's very heavy. But there's also, like I said, this tipping point where you can use that forever and never move on either, and stay feeling sorry for whatever those things were. Now that can sound really harsh, depending where you're at. And sometimes if it's really is too soon for somebody and they're genuinely not ready, then that feels horrible to say that. But there's other times, and I'm bringing all this up because I do think we're going to see this trend as an attitude in society that's going to grow, which is more of, unfortunately or unfortunately, it's time to move on. It's time to step up and get better. It's time to take action and not stay mired in whatever it is. And there's going to be a lot of that in the reflected in the, the world of talking about trauma. And many of us are guilty of that, of like your trauma becomes your new identity. And at some point, and it's very hard, and this takes years, even with help, this takes years. There has to be a point in your healing when you are no longer what happened to you. It's something that happened to you, just like many things that have happened to you. It's not your entire identity. And this sort of, to me, is a good example of from Pisces to Aries as well. And I think it's going to be a really challenging time to figure out how best to help people. But I also get a really good feeling there will be a lot of people that feel actually motivated and energized by that. Sometimes, we need events and people to come on and just sort of snap us out of it, right? If we're honest. Because even if you're the one who's identifying with your something horrible that happened and you're telling the story over and over, and maybe it never quite feels like enough, no matter how many times you've said it to a therapist or people, you never quite get what you need. At some point, it's important to recognize that this is something that you alone have to come to peace with. No amount of pity from or empathy from anybody will take away whatever happened to you. And at some point, you got to find your will to have a life again. And I know all of this sounds really heavy to talk about, but I really do think they're going to be themes. Now we're going to see it in terms of like really nasty stuff with the way things are going in the US, and hopefully that does not come to Canada. Because cutting people off at the knees is not the way to bring about any kind of progress or healing. And at the same time, some of where they're coming from, I think, is this sort of saturation point. Even the wake-up call that Canada or Greenland or Panama have had because of Trump's threats. It's not pleasant, but it's not necessarily a bad thing. If if you've been reliant on the US to carry everything, defense, whatever have you, and then sort of allowing daddy to do whatever he wants because we need him to protect us. Well, it's flipping, isn't it? That karma's changing. Now, doesn't look like daddy's going to be there to help you. And B, why were we capitulating to all and consenting to all these things? Time to step up and find your own ways, your own trade, your own defense. You know, so we're seeing it in a global way too. And we can all feel like it's a wake-up shock. So perhaps you can relate to this in your own life. Are you going through a time? Can you admit you're going through a time when some of the things that you've been looping around in your life that aren't getting quite solved, ways you've been comfortable and relying on something that you thought was secure, but it isn't as secure as you thought? Are you feeling the call to be more self-sufficient? And how are you reacting to that? So let's talk about this Piscean cluster of planets and how this energy, this era is ending. Saturn is still there until May. Saturn is the life lesson of recognizing that we are all one. Everything is interconnected. And in a Buddhist sense, we all have suffering in our lives. Nobody gets away without some level of suffering. And based on the awareness that we all suffer, nobody's getting away with, some people have more money than you, some people have, you know, a better car, a sexier job than you, but they have their own forms of suffering as well. Everybody has some suffering. And based on that, you recognize your fellow human as another equal, not based on anything material, but based on the fact that I see your suffering and they can acknowledge yours. Right now, that's a really tough thing, as you can see. People are having a very hard time with compassion for others. But that's still in the air, and that's still the lesson that's going on. We've got until, I think, the middle of May before it goes into Aries. And when Saturn goes into Aries, it is the life lesson of leadership and initiation. Leadership and initiation are going to become the next themes of the next couple of years. The North Node we mentioned in Pisces already. This is like the destiny. The North Node is to understand and see the suffering of all brings us all together as one. But also, as I mentioned, it's to encourage you to have your own strong sense of inner faith, inner guidance, trusting your own inner compass, your own intuition to guide your steps. It's a very intuitive placement versus the Virgo, which is analytical. It's an intuitive thing. Venus is right there on top of, and so is Neptune, and so is Mercury right on top of this North Node. So the capacity right now to see great acts of compassion is in the air. I would love to see something on the global stage that shows a great act of compassion right now. But it's not really feeling that way, but it is the lesson. Doesn't mean we are learning it, but that is what the planets are saying. Is imagine if somebody like Elon Musk or Bezos or somebody decided to make a grand gesture of philanthropy under a time like this. They could turn the tides of history if they did, if one of these oligarchs did this right now. So the pressure to give, to have compassion for others, to recognize that we're one is so intense right now that people almost want to run the other way. So you might, in your own life, even if it's for one person, find the strength within you to do some act of compassion. It doesn't have to be a huge global thing, and it doesn't have to be something where you go beyond your own limits, but you might extend that to somebody. It's so strong. The other thing that's so strong with a cluster in Pisces is your own intuition and dreams might be heightened, very heightened. I've been dreaming a lot. That usually happens to me every April. But I've been dreaming a lot in the past few months, and more than usual. So that side of us is very active, our intuition and dream life, our visions. So this is another way that you can use the energy of the eclipse. If you really go deeply into your meditations, if you increase it, if you have an intuitive journal, if you write down everything that crosses your mind, every gut feeling you get, if you're listening to somebody talking and you get a strong impression or intuition or clairvoyant moment where you see something, write it all down. You might also feel in a bigger picture way where the world is going. You might just be completely plugged into the timeline right now, that where you wake up and the energy is just so different. The lighting is different. You know, the cosmic activity, meaning like the solar flares and storms, the Schumann resonance, you might be extremely in tune with all these planets in Pisces, because we're tapped into the collective. We're tapped into the oneness at a height, you know, when everything is in Pisces like this. So you can learn about that more as a way to take action. You can write it down. And again, it comes back to taking action in your own life based on what you're feeling. What does your gut say for you about where your life is going next, about what you personally need to do, let's say for April? What's your strongest gut feeling? You know, or maybe you get it for somebody close to you. You get a good sense of what's really necessary for them. And you can reflect that if they're open. So your visions, your creativity, your being tapped into the greater whole right now, to the matrix, if you will, is strong. Now let's talk about Aries. So we've got the sun and moon in Aries, and we've got Chiron hanging out there, not really making an aspect. 22 and 9 is a little far. So the sun and moon in Aries is very warrior-like, very blunt. They are prone to fighting if provoked. If they feel something is unfair, they will roar. Moon and Aries have a lot of suppressed anger, so you're going to see that coming out. It's usually my warning with Moon and Aries is to be careful of driving and road rage and stuff like that. It's people take it out on the road, but they also going to, if they're at parties or getting intoxicated, they're going to take it out. They're going to fight. You might see more people being argumentative under the moon in Aries. You know, you might want to pick your battles when it comes to what you're taking on, whether it's your work, whether it's your landlord, pick your battles. Excuse me, pick your battles, because Moon and Sun in Aries is digging their heels in, and they're going to fight, and they're going to roar. They're going to yell if they need to. And they could be destructive, possibly. Otherwise, it's going to be the best side of Moon and Sun in Aries is extremely motivated, and the will to jump in, take a risk, just try, break out of the old mold, stop worrying and just do it, get her done, is very strong as well. And that's obviously the best side of this to use. So officially, the South Node is not opposing this Sun and Moon in Aries. It's sort of sitting there on its own, making a nice little sextile to Pluto. So Pluto's helping it out a bit. Other than that, it's pretty much isolated. So if you just want to like hunker down, think of yourself and just get some stuff done, move some stuff forward, get active, make 20 phone calls if you need to. Just say, I'm not taking that anymore. I'm going to find a new job. I got no patience. I've told this person I'm done. I'm going to just, that's it. I'm moving on. If you've got that kind of fight that's coming out in you in a good way, like proactive, nothing's touching it. Pluto's helping it. You're safe to just do it. Okay. It's the Piscean energy that's being challenged by the South Node. Yeah, not Saturn, but Neptune and Mercury and Venus are being challenged. So all of that stuff I said about victim and savior, boundaries of how much you help before it's enabling. How far do you take it when you think something through and analyze it versus trusting your intuition side. But the other thing here is that Mars is in Cancer still, and Mars is helping out those same 3 planets. And the watery side of things, again, with Cancer, it's emphasizing the side of like, don't analyze, don't overthink this here. Go with your flow, go with your gut. Trust the dream that you had. And again, Cancer, Mars in Cancer can be really moody and crabby and doesn't like to deal with things directly. But it can also be extremely nurturing and compassionate. So once again, is there something in the air of like a philanthropic action? Maybe you'll see it at a local level instead of a federal level. But we're looking for this compassionate angle, this giving, nurturing angle that's coming up on top of the intuitive psychic flow of these planets. Uranus is also helping out that energy. It's at 24 Taurus still. So it's making still a trine with Pluto. So again, this flowing of sort of shock and surprise and revolution, but it's not, people don't like it, but it's in flow. It's harmony. It sort of means it's meant to be, even if we are kicking and screaming, we don't like change. And Mars is in harmony with Uranus. So again, the things that are being disrupted, the upheavals to your sense of security that are not fun, but they actually are moving something forward in society. And again, Uranus is helping out Mercury, Venus, and Neptune. That would just bring, again, even stronger visions. That's almost like the feeling of a download of a, wow, I just suddenly saw a vision of how things can turn out. I just suddenly got a download of what I need to do in my business. I just suddenly get like flash, 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 and I see something that's going on that I sense coming for the world or for people I know. So it brings like that stroke of genius feeling, that sudden lightning bolt feeling on top of to your creative inspiration, to your sense of intuition, and also maybe sudden acts of compassion or philanthropy, but yeah. So I think we're good. I did not discuss Jupiter much or Chiron, but I feel like they're sort of, they feel more minor to me compared to the giant arrow that we're seeing in the chart here. This launching from past karma to future directions. And this waking up from a Piscean world to an Aryan world is what we're all negotiating. And it's uncomfortable, but it's also at times very exciting. It's both. So let's take a look at the tarot for this eclipse. Okay. So what can we expect? What else can we expect during this eclipse? All right, so we've got the Eon card here, which is the Judgment card in other decks. So it represents the taking of a definite step. See, in the Rider-Waite deck or other Rider-Waite based decks, the Judgment card is literally like the Judgment Day, because those decks are based on more of a Christian model where the power of the faith or the magic is out there. It's God. It's not in you. It's not you. And so the Judgment Day is, a rising to be judged. But for Crowley, for the Thoth deck and the Eon card, it was about your own personal judgment, not in terms of judging yourself. Did I sin? Did I do well? But in the sense of standing before everyone and saying, this is who I am. This is what I think. So that's one of the nuances of the Judgment card versus the Eon. Even on the Judgment Day, in the Christian sense, it's still, you're standing before God and awaiting judgment. Were you okay? Did you do the right thing? Did you do enough? Did you, your actions versus your good deeds, all that. But for the Thoth, for Crowley, it's really like more of a self-evaluation. And now now I'm coming out and I'm standing before you. And this is what I am. This is who I am. So are you in any way considering coming out? And that can be anything where you reinvent yourself, where you admit where you stand on something, and you'll see the fallout, the scrutiny, the people that align with you, the people that are angry if you suddenly say where you stand, let's say even politically right now. Are you ready to take a stand and say, no, I believe in my values are, and then you are therefore out there in public before everybody to be judged or for people to align with you. And that's another sort of warrior Aries like type time, to be bold like that and affirm who you are. The second card is the Two of Wands, which is ironically a Mars and Aries card. So arguing, fighting, debating. So yeah, that seems to go hand in hand, these two things. So the first two cards would suggest that you might be more boldly stating where you're coming from or what you want, and you will have people debating you. Now, this brings me back always to the Pluto and Aquarius chapter, which is basically a time when we come back to the power of the people. But first, the people sort of dismantle the old models, and they find their own tribes. And in order to do that, there's a lot of things that break apart from the mainstream or the main structure, right? So there's going to be a lot of stating your values and finding who you align with really, and alliances that form, groups that form, others that fall apart as you in the process. Ooh, and the third card is the Tower. All right, whatever it is that you might be ready, that you might be deciding or coming out on, stating your piece on. The Tower just means you're liberated from something that's been going on for a long time. So let's say, for example, this is your views and your views and opinions. Okay, well, forget about other things that it could be. If it's your views and opinions, if you've been hiding the fact that you favor something over another, or you don't like something, or you deep down agree with something, if you've been hiding it for too long, it feels like it's a time when you can't hide it anymore. And so you might get into it with people. There's a lot of suppressed anger in these cards. And suppressing your true self and not being who you are outwardly, just sort of like Aries is very much like, this is me, take it or leave it. And if you're not at that, and you've been sort of subverting yourself for whatever reason, and you suddenly come out and say, actually, I know I belong to this group, but I don't agree with a lot of it. Yeah. Or like, oh, I know I work for this company for 20 years, but I actually think this company is really unethical. What? You're going to get pushback. So it's that kind of thing. Now, I hesitate to say on a global level what this is, but I have been feeling, like I said, for over a year, that the end of March, early April of this year was going to be some sort of giant shift, an announcement, or something that was going to be let go, dropped on us, major changing of course that was going to shock us. Now, we're sort of used to waking up and going, what's next, but there could be some other very forceful decision or action coming down the pipes in the next couple of weeks. And whatever it is, it will definitely provoke a lot of backlash. And hopefully this is not triggering an actual war, but these are very warlike cards, I have to be honest. But it could be anything. Neptune in Aries is the revolution. So is Pluto in Aquarius. What things is it going to take? It's already starting. There's already protests everywhere. There's more and more people speaking out. There's more and more new alliances forming, new plans behind the scenes. Europe is talking about increasing their defense. it's scary to say, but the arms movement, you know, people arming themselves and living in an armed world is another part of the Neptune side, the Aries cycle and the Pluto cycle. So the way we understand how we're going to live, that is, again, the Piscean Age dismantling from, you know, we're all sort of one, we're all sort of in this together, with maybe like we've had a couple of countries we consider enemies, but other than that, we don't think about it too much. It's very different than feeling like you are alone and got to defend yourself, whether that's individuals or countries, instead of somehow society will take care of me. Somehow other countries will step in and save us. Now it's like, maybe they won't. So I don't really want to see sometimes these things. All I will say is I've sensed that this timing has been on my mind for over a year, maybe even longer. I remember hearing March 2025 over and over again. So we shall see. We have a few days left of it, and we have an eclipse, and we'll see what comes out of it. Let's take a look for your signs now. And let's be very direct about this and just say, how can you be strategic right now? What do you need to do to be strategic for your own life? Yeah, I like that question, because it brings us to actions again. What do you need to do to be strategic in your own life right now? Aries, what do you need to do to be more strategic? You've got the Princess of Swords. Well, this is a very combative kind of person who makes things complicated, because they're trying to prove something all the time. And because they're trying so hard to prove something, that often is either it doesn't need proving or it's unrealistic, and people see it. And yet this person usually does not accept help or advice. They know better. So usually this person is on a path of self-destruction, or they can make things very destructive for people around them. So your strategic thing would be, you know, if this is you in any way, if you are combative or fighting, or you are not realistic about how you see yourself or your situation, if you're refusing help or you're debating people because you know better than they do, then you have to set down your sword and calm down. And if it is somebody close to you, then your strategy is to, you know, this person needs to be dealt with in terms of like having a, you know, a plan for, you know, what to do if they get out of hand, if they escalate, what intervention might be necessary, what you know, what help do they need if they're fighting something, helping them assess how realistic is this fight. It could be an inner turmoil too. It doesn't even have to be fighting something out there. So your strategy is just make sure this isn't you. If it is, you need to put down your sword and go within and calm down and ask for some help. You need to gauge whether you're fighting just like, you know, and that's really not helping anything, is it? You need to ask yourself, am I complicating my own life? And otherwise, if it's someone around you, then you see what role you can play for that person. Taurus, how can you be strategic? The Empress. That's nice. Hmm. That's very loving and nurturing and motherly. How would that be strategic? Well, it's not really. If the Empress is in her highest self, she is that model mother, that nurturing presence, the one who says, this person needs some comfort. I'll just give it. Oh, you haven't eaten? Come on over for dinner. Now, we phrase this in terms of strategic. Are there empresses out there who would use that kind of generosity strategically? Sure. How would you do that? Well, usually it would be to be wary of whether the person they are being generous to, they actually want something from as well. But that's not what we're suggesting. How can you be strategic, Taurus? Really, it's not about being strategic. It's just letting your heart be open enough to see if you are available to offer that nurturing to somebody that needs it. Or you might be the recipient, and then it's a question again of like, is this generosity coming towards me, or is this nurturing moment, does it have strings attached, or is it sincere? And yeah, a lot of sincerity is a strong word, I think, right now for you. Doing things sincerely and making sure who you're receiving things from is also sincere. Sincerity, nice. Gemini, how can you be more strategic right now? Ah, you've got the judgment, the Eon, or the judgment card. So like we said in the 3-card reading, you're really at a point where you've got to come out and take a stand on things and say where you have to get off the fence and say where you stand. It could be coming up at your work. Maybe you're always in the middle of 15 people's desires and opinions, and you understand them from all sides, but people may not know where you truly stand on a matter. So you might be asked to step up and weigh in and say, I know I've listened to you and you and you, but this is my opinion of what we need to do next. And it could be in your personal life if you've been holding back, saying what you really feel or your true beliefs on a matter. Could be a family matter. You might be pressured or feeling like it's time to come out and say, well, you know what? I actually, I don't know, maybe your parents are divorced and you've never really weighed in on any of how you feel, and you're finally going to say, I actually have more sympathy for dad in this case. Something like that could come up. If not, it could be your political views and opinions, and either way, you're coming out and you're revealing something about yourself that you haven't before. And it's a good thing. Cancer, how can you be more strategic right now? Oh, the lust card or the strength card. Interesting. Well, this is very clear and I love it. You need to just let your passion out. You need to let your passion and your confidence out. Sorry, I was playing with my lighting. It's like 1 minute the sun's in one place and it's in my eyes, next minute it's gone. All right. So Cancer, you need to draw down from that elixir of passion in you, that well of anger or desire that you've got inside. There's so much there. You need to be in that Aries mode, even though you're a Cancer. You sort of need to get out of the watery, dreamy, sleepy, meditative. No, right now, Cancer, you need to like burn some stuff and clear yourself and act and get out of like a stagnation. So the passion's going to do that. If you feel any sense of excitement about anything right now, I don't care what it is. I love walking my dog after, at sunset. Okay, great. You love it. Do it. If you love it, love it. If you're always like, oh, well, I have to, and they need, and oh, poor them. And no, you've done enough of that. Enough. No. If you're like, I don't care. I don't know. You have an inspiration for a new creative idea, even though it will make no money. I don't care. You must connect to your passion side. And how is it strategic? Well, it's strategic because if you are finally passionate enough about your own goals to act on them, or about your own motivation to exercise, or whatever it is that's making you feel like, I really want this again. I'm really ready for that. That builds in the boundaries that you need from being too mushy and empathic all the time, that you're taking on so much and then you feel burdened and heavy and whatever, crabby, bitter. This is going to be like, I'm sorry, so and so, but like, I've got this thing and I've really got to get it done and I'm excited about it. Or it's like, I'd love to talk, but I promised myself I'd go to the gym today. Or whatever. It builds in some boundaries that are needed right now if you've got some passion. And you're going to align, you're going to raise your energy, and you're going to align with different things and different people again. It's going to bring in opportunities and new people. Ah, that's amazing, Cancer. All right, Leos, how can you be more strategic? 6 of Swords, science, okay. Well, that is actually a very strategic card, because it's sort of like my science, or almost like surgery kind of card. Meticulous, detached details. Think of how clear-minded and brilliant and precise and non-emotional a surgeon must be. So right now, your strategy is to be looking at your life, or whatever problem is on your plate, surgically. It means being completely removed from the passion and the anger and the injustice and the whatever and the what I want. Completely the opposite message of Cancer. So if you're dealing with anything difficult or messy, you have to look at it from, you have to pretend you're an eagle. You're flying overhead and you have no connection to anything or anyone in this thing. And you just observe what you see. And you're like, well, that needs to go. That needs to be added. This is working. This isn't working. Very dispassionate, cold, analytical mindset. That is going to be very strategic for you going forward. So, because Leo, you're emotional too, different than Cancer. Cancer is like, oh, like the mummy kind of thing. Leo, you've got a big heart. You're passionate. You want to help as well. You care, and so, and you want what you want too, but you've got a lot to give, you've got a big heart. Now this is asking a lot for you to be strategic, and don't be such a big passionate heart about this right now. Be a little cool and calculated, a little more to slice through and get some things, get some ducks in a row that you've been working on. Virgo, you've got that south node sitting on you. Old karma is coming up, right? How could it not, with the south node in Virgo and all this time? It's almost out of there. It's like 27 degrees, but you're still in this period where it's like, oh my Lord, all this old karma. It could be people from the past, blasts from the past, things coming back to bite you that you thought were like done. things that you're like, oh, can I just get off this roller coaster? I've learned this already. It's almost over, but there's this feeling like old karma, okay? So if you want to ask yourself anything through that lens, if you feel like, why is this happening to me again? Why does that happen to me? Why can't I, whatever. Ask yourself in the lens of karma. How, in the face of X, Y, or Z, how can I clear this karma? What do I need to do to clear the karma? Ask yourself that in meditation or to have a dream or a sign. Ooh, and I'm just getting like a lot of physical movement as I say that. So I think this is a thing. All right. How can you be more strategic, Virgo? Chariot. Well, Chariot has his armor on. You can ask yourself if you have too much armor or whether you need more armor in the situation you're in to be more effective. The other thing with the Chariot, though, is that they're trying to get a bunch of people to work together or do things together that don't really seem to want to move or budge. It's a very difficult situation. And the charioteer is trying their best to like bring everybody together on the same page. It can be a lot about control and manipulation. It can also be the art of negotiations with groups. So I don't know if that's related to what you feel is coming up for you karmically or what's like, but if there's a side of you that is trying to get like a bunch of people or ideas on board as one thing so it can just go forward, full thrust, you might need to re-look at that. I'm getting a feeling that it might not be worth, or it might not be possible in this case. And it might not be worth it either to spend all your time trying to do that. Very interesting. So for you, Virgo, there's an awful lot of strategy in the act of letting go of what isn't working so that you can allow in things that are working better. And again, ask yourself, is there some sort of old karma that I'm clearing, and what actions could I take that would help me do that? Okay. Looking at Libra now. What would be strategic for you right now? Ah, Ace of Swords, that's nice. For you, the strategic thing is a clear mind, inspired ideas, and a clear mind. Which can be a task for a Libra who's always whirling around the myriad of possibilities and thinking of all sides. This isn't really like the Eon card where you have to come out and say, say where you stand or anything. But this is your own mental clarity. You need, again, I'm getting a feeling like you don't need to say it to anyone. It's not asking you to get into conflicts with anybody or declare things, but it does say that you need to get your own mental clarity on something. So again, if maybe it's just all of the sea of news and politics, and maybe you need to just sort of, call it a day, that you've watched enough, you've seen enough, and you make your decision, what and who you stand with, if it's with any other issues that you've been, waffling about, or people that you're not clear on, again, there's this sort of clarity and light is like, you're going to get your moment of like, aha, that's what it is. And I want you to stick to it for your own peace of mind. And again, you don't have to say it to anyone or get into debates with anyone. It's for your own nervous system to calm down and your own peace of mind to say, that's what I think. That's what I think. Yep. That's what I see. Scorpios, what would be strategic for you right now? Ah, Jupiter and Libra, Four of Swords, truce. Well, you might be running around talking to a lot of people, Scorpio. I mean, this is a card sort of truce. I mean, it says Jupiter and Libra mediating and talking to everyone and being in the middle of, and you know, getting people to perhaps make amends, bringing people together, networking together, you know, facilitating conversations and discussions. And I get a feeling that there's a little bit in there for you too of making your own amends. I'm not sure with who or with what, but there might be just an awareness that you've been a certain way over many years, and you're letting go of that version of yourself. And I doubt you're going to admit it to anybody, but you might feel like you have to sort of make amends for a time when you weren't quite yourself. Or you might realize your role in group dynamics, and it's nice. It feels like a softening. You want to be facilitating and softening and making peace with people, groups, friends, whatever, that you weren't previously. But this is how you strategically use this eclipse energy. And I think you're doing it already. Making amends keeps coming up over and over in my mind. So I don't know whether it's you to somebody, somebody towards you, or facilitating and helping it arrive with groups. Sagittarius, how can you use this energy strategically? And you got the Five of Wands, strife. Mars and Leo, Saturn and Leo, sorry, that is a lesson of ego, yeah. Saturn and Leo. It's one of those things where it could be like almost a narcissistic placement, because it would suggest somebody who has a very weak sense of self and ego, but who might come across as very self-aggrandizing because they feel so insecure, which is very classic narcissist description. You might be dealing with one. The other thing about Saturn and Leo is lessons of leadership and humility, because the ultimate goal of Leo and Saturn and Leo in its best sense is somebody who is very secure in themselves and their leadership, and therefore they can be noble and generous and humble, because they don't need to run around grandstanding and saying how great they are and this and that. So, you know, you might be also facing some tests or lessons of how you're coming across to people with your own ego or your leadership style, or hopefully, like in the worst case scenario, there's no drama queens around you and you're not the drama queen, but it can be like that. But the Five of Wands often is a card of arguments or competitions between people, you know, one-upping, wanting to be dominant, and therefore usually there's arguments or things fall apart or people quit. So how's that strategic? Well, First of all, you'd have to reflect whether this reflects you in any way, because then you have the chance to take charge and correct it, by being more comfortable, confident, and humble. So that's hard, but if you can step back and say, yeah, I've been a little bit much lately, and say it to whoever it is, yeah, I realize I was triggered and I was acting overbearing or whatever, I'm sorry. You can calm the storm. But if it's people around you, I'm hearing like you probably need to be aware that you're dealing with somebody with a narcissist, and therefore learning about that and what that means and what you can do and what you can't do when you're dealing with one. Yeah. Okie doke. Capricorn. How can you be more strategic? And I pull a Capricorn card. Mars and Capricorn. Hard work. Productivity and hard work. That is your MO. So, yeah, that's sort of funny because it's sort of like, well, the strategy is to work harder, is to be more productive, more efficient, do more. It's always a good strategy unless you're already so up to here and you're a workaholic and you're burnt out, then that's not good advice. But if you are feeling okay and you're frustrated with your life on any level, buckling down and doing more work or being more productive or taking a look at what could make things more streamlined or efficient is actually a great advice. And it's all about, self-control with Mars and Capricorn. Interesting. Yeah, sort of boring, but very strategic advice. If you haven't been feeling like yourself in some way, and you're not your usual productive self, then that's what you take a look at. And if you're in any situations or scenarios that are difficult during the eclipse, you can sort of double down on the work side of it. And that might calm the problem instead of tackling it and getting into arguments or, it's like, okay, there's tension here. I'm just going to work twice as hard. There's tension here. Okay, I'm going to show them I can do this. It's that kind of feeling. Aquarius, what would be strategic for you right now? Princess of Cups. Wow. So opposite to Aquarian energy, this very vulnerable, sensitive person who goes into their shell and retreats. But I do know that Aquarians do have that side because they never show anybody their true sensitivities, no matter how close they are. It's very rare. So you actually do have sort of a younger, more vulnerable emotional self who's never had a chance to meet the world because you hide it and you come out with the tough side of you, or the detached, oh well, it doesn't matter, the good side of you. So strategically here, this is saying it's time to bring out your more vulnerable side to the world or to somebody safe. Strategic, well, it's going to help you feel closer to people, less lonely, better understood, reducing a lot of tension in the room or the group or your marriage or whatever it is. Show more of your vulnerability. You're going to hate that. message item. Okay. All right. Pisces. What would be strategic for you right now in this eclipse? Ooh, I like the witch, the art, or the witch. Things are brewing. You're mixing and matching and waiting for the right timing. It's very creative and alive, electric feeling. I like it for you. It's a good time, actually. All those planets on you, it's making you feel really juiced up here. You can do a lot of things under this influence right now, under this eclipse. You might be able to have very meaningful or moving forward discussions. You might be able to drum up resources or support or places to do things or whatever you need. So, yeah, strategically, it's really like, there's no clear strategy really, like to say, just do this. It's more like allow all of this magic and intermixing and um, and the way this is interrelated, and they know them, and therefore, and something could happen because, and I set this in motion, and I suggested that, and now this is brewing, and something's in the air, and you're just going to let it all unfold in its own natural timing and mix. So there's really no strategic thing except you're going, woo, and allow it and enjoy it. Enjoy it. Enjoy this last big hurrah in your sign to manifest something great for you. Okay, if you're still here watching to the end, then thank you. And please click and like and subscribe and share. And if you would like a reading, you can message me either below the video or on any form of social media under Catherine Allen. All right, I wish you an interesting eclipse. I hope that this motivated you and energized you in some way. Take care.